They thought it would be romantic to spend their 25th wedding anniversary in the town they'd grown up in, Danzig, a free city-state on the Baltic Sea, surrounded by Poland, close to Germany. And you could fly direct now. Aeroflot, JFK, Gdansk. When they arrived, they were completely disoriented. Everything looked different than the way they remembered. It had been over 40 years since they'd been here. But Aunt Rita remembered her Polish, and she asked the taxicab driver, "Który jest najlepszy hotel w Gdańsku? Take me to the best hotel in town." They may have left without a dime, but they were coming back with their pockets full. They checked into a suite. On the top floor, of a 34-story hotel. Panoramic views of the town and the sea. Plaster falling into the mattress. And in the morning, they went looking for the houses they'd grown up in. Uncle Henry didn't recognize his house. The second floor had been completely demolished. But Rita recognized the hayloft in the backyard. Joe's! Joe's! A woman called from her window, seeing them snooping around her yard, and they fled in fright, even though there was nothing to be afraid of anymore. They went looking for Rita's house, past the street corner, where my aunt remembered waving goodbye to her brother, my father, as he carried his suitcase and his violin, boarded the tram, bound for the boats, bound for America, waving goodbye discreetly, hoping the authorities wouldn't notice. They found Rita's house, walked boldly up to the front door with a brass nameplate with her family's name still engraved on it, was nailed to the doorpost. "May I come in?" she asked the woman who answered the door. "No, no, please go away." "But you don't understand. This is the house I grew up in, my family's house." "I don't know anything about it. I was given the house by the state. Please go away." "But you don't understand." Aunt Rita tried to peer through the lace curtains, tried to get a glimpse of the mahogany dining table, the cherry wood bureau, tried to smell her mother's perfume, taste her mother's cooking. Krepla, Canedla, Kala. The next morning, they got on the tour bus, headed for Auschwitz. As they approached the camp, the tour guide pointed out the arched sign that still reads, "Arbeit macht frei." Work sets you free. They all thought they were going to work camps. Aunt Rita and Uncle Henry got off of the bus slowly. "I don't think this is a very good idea. I think we should go back to the hotel. I think we should go back home." But Uncle Henry took her by the elbow and guided her through the gates. "We've come this far," he said. "We're going the whole way." The only thing that remained on display from the 3 million people who had been incinerated here was a small urn of ashes, a few pairs of children's shoes, and a small pile of human hair. Aunt Rita took the bouquet of flowers that Uncle Henry had bought her that morning in the market for their 25th wedding anniversary, and she laid them by the ashes. She looked up. She saw Henry standing by the barbed wire gates, heaving with sobs. She had never seen him cry before, but she knew he had left his They got back on the bus more quickly and sat in separate seats without speaking. Aunt Rita closed her eyes and she started to pray. She had hardly ever prayed before in her life, but she needed to pray now. She didn't know if she remembered the words. She didn't know what to do with her hands. She didn't know what to do with her hands. Evidently, the most ancient gesture for prayer is raising the hands towards the heavens. Later, the hands were pulled into the body, wrists crossed over the heart. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years later, the hands were placed together. They're not sure why. They think it has something to do with the shackles of slavery and came to symbolize man's submission to the Creator. Now, my aunt, not being a woman who submits easily and sitting on a crowded bus, didn't know what to do with her hands. She said, if there is any justice in this universe, if there is anything supernatural in this universe, if there is anything sacred in this universe, I need a sign. I need a sign. I need a sign. She opened her eyes and looked out the window. And there was a rainbow arched across the fields of golden green Polish wheat. Not a hint of a rainbow, a half of a rainbow, a part of a rainbow, but a complete, entire rainbow. A rainbow. They went back to the hotel. They got into bed without taking off their clothes, without turning off the light, without speaking. And they went to sleep. Faith of great clarity, I go for refuge to the Buddha, the master from whom supreme initiation has been attained, to the doctrine of undifferentiable method and wisdom taught by them, and to the two types of aspirants. From this time until enlightenment, I will generate the altruistic intention to become enlightened. Within the great seal of clear light, on the broad path of the immortal gods, in the center of an ocean of offering clouds, like 5-colored rainbows thoroughly bedecked, I'm sitting on my bed in the Shangri-La Hotel in Santa Monica on Ocean Boulevard, studying the text of the Kala Chakra initiation. My friend Angie is lying beside me, reading Mothering magazine. She's pregnant. I am wondering what in her psychological constitution allows her to be perfectly content reading a tabloid while I am having an anxiety attack trying to decipher the 37 vows of the Bodhisattva. We are both here for the Kala Chakra initiation, one of the most esoteric and advanced initiations in the Tibetan practice, given by His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama of Tibet. Every morning, we walk to the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium, and we wait in long lines until it is our turn to take 3 mouthfuls of saffron-blessed water and spit out our emotional and mental toxins into this big bucket. Angie always closes her eyes so she doesn't have to look at the pool of yellow spit. As we enter the auditorium, we do 3 prostrations, one for the awakened mind, one for the pathway leading to the awakened mind, and one for the community of people on the path. And then we look for our places in the crowded 5,000-seat auditorium. auditorium, trying not to stare at the celebrities. Richard Gere, Barbara Streisand. We close our eyes and we promise to be good, to be kind, to be truthful, to take other people's well-being as more important than our own well-being. And at the break, we race into the lobby, and we wait in long lines to use the telephone, while people call their agents, their secretaries, their lawyers, trying to find out whether or not a deal has come through, and whether or not we've been invited yet to the Richard Gere party for the Dalai Lama. And if not, have any of our friends been invited? And if not, can you get the address? And if not, are there any other important parties we should know about? And then we race back and get our seats. And we close our eyes. And we promise to be good, to be kind, to be truthful, to take other people's well-being as more important than our own well-being. And on the way home, Angie says whatever plans I've made for the night, I should cancel them. Her special friend is coming to dinner. But Angie, I say, we both made plans to see Alan, Mindy, Marion. Look, she says, my friend is very finicky. If he doesn't like someone, he'll just leave. So make something up. But Angie, we've just promised to be truthful, to be kind, to be altruistic, to take other people's Look, she says, I'm having dinner with my friend. You can come. Do what you want. So I call our friends. I say, sorry, something else has come up. And Angie and I take turns racing into the bathroom, taking showers, coming out, going into the closets, putting on our best outfits, going back into the bathroom, putting on our makeup. There's a knock at the door. Angie answers, that cannot be him. He's very short, wrinkled, wearing an ill-fitting suit. Angie says, Carlos, Nina, Carlos Castaneda. And he extends his hand. Handshake, 2800 BC. Originally the symbol of a deity bestowing power on an earthly ruler. Handshake, the Egyptian hieroglyph for the verb to give. Handshake, alternative story. An ancient villager is walking on a pathway outside of his village. He encounters a stranger. He reaches for his dagger. The stranger reaches for his dagger. And the two men spend a long time circling around each other, trying to assess whether or not the situation is safe. When they determine that it is, they extend their weapon hand, empty. Women who throughout history didn't bear weapons never developed the custom of the handshake. Carlos extends his hand, shakes mine, and this huge smile spreads wrinkles across his face like a dry riverbed in the middle of the Mexican desert. He sits down and starts to tell us stories about his life. And he is one of the most charismatic, intelligent, articulate, wise people I have ever met. I can hardly believe I'm in the same room with this guy. When I was in college, I read all of his books, and I would quote him to my friends, and my friends would quote him to me, and we would lead our lives according to this guy's advice. He says that when his teacher, Don Juan, died, well, he says shamans don't die. They dematerialize. And when Don Juan dematerialized, then La Gorda became his teacher. And anything that La Gorda wanted him to do, he had to do it. So, one day, La Gorda says, bueno, quiero que I want you to go to Tucson. Become a short order cook in a little greasy spoon cafe. I'm not going, Carlos said. I like my life in Los Angeles. I like my friends. I like my apartment. I don't know how to cook. And he got into his beaten up old truck and he drove off. 3 hours later, my life in Los Angeles, it isn't that great. 9 hours later, my life in Los Angeles, it's unpleasant. 18 hours later, my life in Los Angeles is completely miserable. And he drives straight to Tucson, pulls up to the first greasy spoon cafe that he finds, goes in, asks for a job. Do you know eggs, they say? You see, these places cook breakfast all day. Hamburgers and fries are easy, but eggs require some skill. So Carlos decided to rent a studio apartment. And he practiced eggs for a couple of weeks. Fried, scrambled, hard-boiled, soft-boiled. Over easy, over hard, poached, Benedict, omelets. He got the job. After a couple of weeks, he was made in charge of hiring and firing, and he hired a young waitress named Linda, who after a couple of weeks confided in him that she was a fan of Carlos Castaneda, and she gave him a couple of Castaneda's books to read. He took them home. He gave them back to her. He said, I tried to read them, but I didn't really understand. She said, there's a rumor that Carlos Castaneda is in Tucson. I really want to meet him. Oh, I really want to meet him. Linda came into the cafe one day very agitated. What's happening? Carlos said. He's here. I know that it's him. There's this tall, dark, handsome Mexican man in a white limousine in the alley, air conditioning on, windows rolled up. He's scribbling in a pad. I know that it's him. But he'll never like me. I'm fat, and I'm not pretty. And I'm just a waitress in this stupid cafe. Carlos looked at her. He said, you are perfect, just the way you are. Now, whoever this guy is, you go out there and you introduce yourself to him. So Linda gathered all of her courage, and she went into the alleyway. And she came back, and she was really crying now. What happened? Carlos asked her. I did just what you told me to do. I went out there, I knocked on his window, he rolled it down. I said, hi, I'm Linda. He said, go fuck yourself. And she really started to cry now. Carlos took her in his arms because he really cared about this girl. And he started to cry with her because he really loved her. And he thought, should I tell her who I am? She'll never believe me. For a year and a half, she's known me as Joe Gomez. When he got back to his apartment, La Gorda was sitting there waiting for him. He told her what happened. ¿Qué puedo hacer? He said. What can I do? Vámonos, La Gorda said. I can't just leave. I have to say goodbye to my friends. I have to train a replacement. Tienes miedo, she said. You're afraid. You're afraid no one can cook eggs as good as Carlos Castaneda. You're afraid the restaurant will close. People will starve. Vámonos. And they got into Carlos's beaten-up old truck. And they drove off. I met this Soviet guy in a Georgian restaurant in Moscow at a dinner party. We both ate lots of pickled garlic. He was leaving very early the next morning for a whirlwind tour of the United States, accompanying Boris Yeltsin. Yeltsin is Gorbachev's most popular and vocal critic. He thinks Gorbachev isn't moving quickly enough towards free enterprise. 4 months later, I am at an East-West conference, being a small group facilitator at the Marriott Hotel in Newport Beach, and this Soviet guy shows up. I end up in his hotel room in the late afternoon. We start to kiss. As he slides the shirt off of my shoulder, I suggest that we turn on the television. Gorbachev's face emerges from the field of static. The kisses start to make me feel like I am turning into the dots of the evening news. This is why women marry politicians, I realize, so they can feel like they're turning into the television. When the news is over, he turns the radio on to a Spanish-speaking station. At first, I think this is a little strange, but then I realize he doesn't understand English either. The party at my friend's loft in San Francisco is dying down. It's late. I go into the bedroom to get my coat. There's this dark-eyed, dark-haired, dark-skinned man, evening shadow, pleated pants, shirts buttoned all the way up to the collar young man, sitting on the car seat couch, reading a novel I had liked so much I'd given it to my friend to read. Good book, I say. It's a book I've been meaning to read, he says. Where are you from, I ask. The Soviet Union, he says. This is before scores of Soviets were landing in California. Me and every friend I knew had been to Moscow. This is before they were letting people out. This is when the only Russians I knew were my grandmother's age. I wonder how he got here. How did you get out, I ask. He sits back, pulls a pack of Camels without filters from his breast pocket, lights one up. It was like this, he says. I was living in a 100-year-old apartment building in Leningrad with my mother. You have to understand, in Soviet Union, you do not live in an apartment. You live in a room in an apartment. At one point, there were 18 people living in an apartment with me. When I'm 12, I go to mother. I say, I have to have a room of my own. This is impossible. Our room is 22 square meters. More than the minimum the state allows for 2 people. So even though my mother is architect and has built hundreds of apartments all over Leningrad, we cannot move. Instead, we have big cabinet and we put it in middle of room for privacy. One day, I am sitting in bed, leaning against cabinet, reading novel. And hero of novel drinks raw eggs. I think this is manly thing to do. I want to be a man. So, I go straight to refrigerator. I take raw egg. I crack it into cup. I prepare to drink it. And it is rotten. I get sick to my stomach. I go straight to window and I pour it out. And it lands on the head of the building inspector. Come this day to evaluate needs of building. I run. I hide in cabinet. But inspector goes through entire building and he finds me. And he tells me I am terrorist. Needless to say, the building gets no repairs, and everyone is mad at me. Their faucets leak. They have no hot water. We have to move, but we cannot move. One day, we get lucky. Kissinger makes deal with Brezhnev for Jews to go to Jerusalem. Me, I'm atheist. My mother is atheist. But we want to leave, so we put name on list. We wait, and we wait, and we wait, and we get chosen. We prepare to go. But you can only take $120 out of Soviet Union. So for first time in my life, my mother gives me plenty of money to have in pocket. So if I'm on street and I see something to buy I can sell in West, I have the money to buy it. We sell all of our furniture, even the big cabinet. But it is so big, the man who buys it cannot even get it out of the door. We prepare to go. We stuff our suitcases full of things to sell in West. Pink champagne, caviar, and the few contraband things. I don't tell my mother, but I put them in the lining of coat. The cross I used to wear around my neck because it was trendy. 10 rubles, and a bottle of vodka. We go to airport, and the last thing I remember is this big cabinet standing alone in middle of empty room. At the airport, we are joined by mother's family. A mother, a father, a daughter, a son, and an old lady, the grandmother. The authorities search us over very carefully. And they go to old lady. They see she's wearing cross around her neck, and they yank it off. You're not allowed to take a religious article out of Soviet Union. They think you're taking something valuable. The old lady starts to cry. This cross she's been wearing around her neck ever since she was a child. And on the airplane she keeps crying. Crying and crying and crying and crying, and I decide to go up to her. I reach into the lining of coat and I hand her my cross. She starts kissing my hand. It was unsettling. To me, all I care about is 501 Levi's, Sony Trinitron, car telephone. To her, all she cares about is her old world spirituality. To me, this cross, it's a fashion pressed upon me by my proletariat neighborhood, like my bell-bottoms. To her, this cross from me, it's a miracle. Okay, if I take the dollar and I give it to the bank, then the bank gives me 0.86 rubles for each dollar. So if a cup of coffee costs 2 rubles, then a cup of coffee costs $2.32. If I take the dollar and I give it to the kid on the street, then I get $10 for each ruble. So if a cup of coffee costs 2 rubles, a cup of coffee costs 20 cents. If I take the dollar and give it to the bank, then I give the dollar to the bureaucracy. If I take the dollar and I give it to the kid on the street, then I'm a criminal. But the kid on the street takes the dollar, buys a VCR. Why shouldn't the kid have a VCR? Why shouldn't the kid have what I have? That's what freedom is all about, isn't it? Snowing. My father and I are both wearing our flannel pajamas, lying on our separate beds, staying in the best hotel in Bayshore, Long Island, which turns out to be a motel, the kind with red velvet wallpaper and the kinds of rooms you can rent by the hour. We've come for my aunt's grandniece's funeral, my father's grandniece. And we start talking to each other the way you do when someone you know has died, like you're walking through a window. I ask him to tell me about his childhood. I never told you, he says. No, he never told me. He never wanted to talk about it. And I knew he didn't want to talk about it, so I never asked. But I always wanted to ask. He says the day he was bar mitzvahed, January 30th, 1933, Hitler came to power. He says when he was going to the gymnasium, he was having to read Mein Kampf as a textbook. When he went home to show his father what he was having to read in school, his father said, "Not to worry. They never eat the soup as hot as they cook it," meaning things sound worse than they are, meaning people aren't really that bad, meaning things won't get that bad, meaning we're not going to leave our house, our property, our bank account, our prestige, our job, our community, our friends, just because of some book you're reading in high school. So my father continued to sit on a bench in the back of the class while his schoolmates came dressed in their Nazi youth uniforms. My father got beaten up on the way home from school. He had his bicycle stolen. He started to have trouble concentrating on his studies. But there was a teacher who took a liking to him and invited my father to stay after school so he could help him out. It was the custom in those days, when the boys graduated, that they would get caps, and all of their friends would sign their caps. And then they would wear them around the town for 2 or 3 weeks. Ha! And all of the townspeople would treat them, ha, as if they were somebody special, ha, as if they were somebody the future depended on. But when my father gave his cap to his friends to sign, none of them would sign it because he was a Jew. And when he handed in his money to go to the graduation party, they wouldn't accept his money because he wasn't invited to the party, because he was a Jew. But this teacher had a special party of his own and invited all of the boys. When the boys in their Nazi youth uniforms came, they looked at the teacher and said, "You've invited the Jews." But the teacher stood his ground, and he asked my father for his cap, and he took his best pen out of his breast pocket, and he signed my father's cap. And that cap went all the way around the room, from one boy to the next. And they all signed my father's cap. I still have that cap, my father said. I'll show it to you sometime. How did you get out? I asked him. He says after graduating, he was admitted to the University of Poland, which was across the town from where he lived. So he was given a special tram pass to go freely from the university back to his house. Now his best friend Leonard lived close to the university, but Leonard had found himself a girlfriend who lived close to my father. So Leonard went to my dad and said, look, do me a favor. Go to the authorities, tell them you've lost your tram pass. They'll issue you a new one and I can go visit my girlfriend. My father thought, sure, Leonard's my best friend. Why shouldn't Leonard have what I have? And he went to the authorities. He said he'd lost his tram pass. They said, that happens all the time. We just need to see your registration card. As he leafed through his wallet, looking for his registration card, his tram pass fell right out on the desk. Young man, the woman said, who were you getting a tram pass for? No one. I really thought I'd lost it. Really, thanks anyway, but, young man, the punishment for fraud is expulsion. And this appears to be a case of fraud. We are going to investigate your case. My father was expelled from the University of Poland. Dad. He wasn't permitted to go to any university in Poland. Dad. Or any university in Germany. Dad. Oi, 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 oi. What have you done? You have ruined your life. It was all right for my father to read Mein Kampf as a textbook, sit on a bench in the back of the class, get beaten up, have his bicycle stolen. But it wasn't all right for a Jewish boy not to get an education. What are we going to do? We are going to have to send you to America. I'm not going, my father said. I'm not leaving you behind. I like my life here. I don't speak English. Not to worry, his father said. You go first. We will come later. You go first. We will follow. And they accompanied my father to the tram stop, carrying his suitcase and a small violin, as if he were going away for the weekend, an overnight in the country. That violin, my father said recently, he had always wanted a 50-year-old violin, but his parents bought him a violin made out of green wood. And then they made him schlep it to America. I'm not taking it, he said, it's ridiculous. But his mother said, you'll get to the United States, you'll run out of money, you can sell it. So he took it along to please them, planning to leave it in his cabin on the boat, which he did. But his cabin mate saw it sitting there, went running after him, your violin, your violin. A few months ago, my father turned 70, and he pulled out his old violin, which he hadn't played since he was a boy. Now, he said, I have a 50-year-old violin. His parents accompanied him to the tram stop and waved goodbye as he boarded the tram, bound for the boat, bound for America, waved goodbye discreetly, hoping the authorities wouldn't notice. Bye. It was great to see you. Good party. Give me a call. Bye. I'm still at the party. It's still late. I am still talking to this Russian guy. I ask him what he does. He says he studies media. Media is the future. It used to be that human beings had three primal needs. The need for food, the need for shelter, and the need for, how you say it, sounds like procrastination, fornication. And these needs would serve as motivations for people to do things. Now there is fourth primal need, the need for gadgets, devices, the need for technology. Take the car, for example. It used to be that the car would serve the other needs. If you have a car, you get better food, you get better shelter, and women like you better. So you get better fornication. But now it's a different thing. Take turbocharge, for instance. Who needs to go from 0 to 60 in 4 seconds instead of 10? Or take my mother, for instance. She has new sound system. Deck-to-deck dubbing, Dolby. She has no tapes. She doesn't even know what Dolby is. Before I get there, she just takes everything out, puts it on shelf. Nobody sets anything. It has to have levers that go up and down. It's an aesthetic thing. Take this family, for instance, I meet in Soviet Union in the airport. The mother, the father, the daughter, the son, and the old lady with the cross. They come to the United States. They are greeted by organization NIANA, the New York Association for New Americans, pre-fascist organization. But they give you $500 to get started. This family takes entire $500 and they buy Sony Trinitron. Then they go out in the street and they get crates to sit on for furniture. You have to get the picture. Each one is incredible character. First is the father. 5'2", as wide as he is tall, always wears little muscle t-shirts with décolleté on top, looks like brassiere for his stomach. He's very intelligent and convinced of his superiority. Then there's the mother. 6'2", pear-shaped, very narrow top of head, and widening all the way down to these huge feet. She thinks she's stupid, but she accepts it. Spends all her time in the kitchen cooking meals that could devastate entire French town. Then there's a sister, very tall, unnaturally skinny, hates the world and rejects it as much as possible. And my friend, Michael. He's 27, I'm 15. This should illustrate something about his character. He's very hard to get along with. He has metal teeth. Finally, the old lady, the grandmother, with the cross. They're all sitting around on their crates from the street watching the television. But they understand no English. They have the hardest time even getting along in the grocery store. So they explain to each other what's going on so no one misses anything. They say, oh, look, he just killed him. Oh, look, she took package, is going to give it to the other guy. Oh, look, he just killed him. He just killed him. Look, he just killed him.
Jim Laurie, ABC News in Lithuania.
In a moment, we'll go to Asia, where they are forcing the boat people to go back to Vietnam.
Go, keep moving, go. Hey, get over here. Go, they got illegals. Gun it.
There is no sport in anything unless there is great danger.
Where does it start? Walk me through it.
It's all a military ambush. You want speed, surprise. You don't install fear within the first 30 seconds. You're not going to get anything. Put people on the ground. You abuse them as necessary. You take whatever they have. Check them. When you're good, you're on your way, you go home.
You mentioned several times that you have to instill fear in these illegal aliens. Why don't you explain to me exactly how you instill fear in them?
A lot of it's done by yelling, like I said, grabbing a child, grabbing a woman.
When you're out there and you're ripping babies away from their mother's arms, what kind of weapons are you carrying?
I use a K-bar military issue. Some people use switchblades. I've seen one guy use a machete.
You really don't have any feelings, do you?
For me, people as far as I look at it. Honestly, I say that's cool. Heartless and cruel and whatnot. Now don't even think about those people. And what more is the money.
Go, keep moving.
Angie and I are back in the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium, promising to be good, to be kind, to be truthful, to take other people's well-being as more important than our own well-being. We are wearing red blindfolds. We have red protection cords tied around our shoulders. We are throwing truth sticks into the air. We are licking sweet yogurt nectar out of our left palms. We are imagining that we are the Kalashakra deity with 7 green arms on one side and 7 black arms on the other side, a lotus in our belly, red drops moving up the spine, white drops moving down the spine. We are imagining that we are the Kalashakra deity and that we are in sexual consort with the Kalashakra deitess, and we are using that energy of sexual consortium to promise to dedicate our lives to enlightenment. On the way home, Angie says that her friend is coming over again, and all of our friends can come. Carlos arrives, shakes my hand, that huge desert warm smile spreads out across his face. He sits down. He says that this time, La Gorda asked him to go to Escondido. Check into a motel. The kind with olive green carpets. Cigarette burns in the floor. The smell of cigarette smoke still lingering in the furniture. How long do I have to stay? Carlos asks her. Until you die, she says. I'm not going, Carlos said. I like my life in Los Angeles. I like my friends. I like my apartment. And he got into his beaten-up old truck, and he drove off. 3 hours later, my life in Los Angeles, it isn't that great. 9 hours later, my life in Los Angeles, it's unpleasant. 18 hours later, my life in Los Angeles, it's completely miserable. And he drives straight to Escondido, pulls up to the first motel he finds, checks in to a room with olive green carpets. Cigarette burns in the floor. The smell of cigarette smoke still lingering in the furniture. Well, what did you do? I asked him. Did you read, write, watch television, listen to the radio, talk to your friends on the phone? I did nothing, Carlos says. Nothing. I stared out the window, watched little particles of dust catching the light. I stared at the ceiling. I studied the map of cigarette burns in the floor. I drank coffee. I ate. I slept. I got terrified. The fear would come up so strong that I would feel as if I were going to die. I would have to lie against the bed, pressing the corner of the mattress into my stomach, just trying to stay alive. And then one day, everything changed. It was as if I had died. Everything I ever cared about I didn't care about anymore. Romance, friends, the future, the past, fame, fortune. I was completely free. I got on the phone. I called my friends. I said, guys, I'm not coming back. Divide up my things amongst yourselves. They said, Carlos, you're drunk. I said, I'm not drunk. I'm not coming back. If you don't take my things, the landlady will. And then I got into my truck and I drove off. I had no idea where I was going. And I'd never felt happier in my entire life. The difference between me and most people. Most people look at their lives like they're on a train, sitting in the caboose. And their lives are stretching out behind them like the tracks. And they see, I've done this, I've done that, I've done this other thing. And they're disappointed, but they adjust. And they know just what's going to happen next because of what happened before. But me, I sit in that train in the locomotive, and my life is stretching out in front of me. I have no idea what's going to happen next, but I know that anything can happen. That's what keeps me happy. That's what keeps me alive. You see, you have to listen to the yearnings of the heart. Ambition, it's the enemy of intuition. You have to listen to the quiet callings of the heart and know that anything can happen. That's what keeps me happy. That's what keeps me alive. That's what he said. And I'd never felt happier in my entire life. I have to remember that. I have to listen to the yearnings of the heart and know that anything can happen. I have to remember that.